Okay, we are now on part 2 of picking, prepping and performing your monologues. Part 2 is prepping those monologues, how to do that and how to get them into good shape and make sure that you're really happy with the way you can perform them in the audition room. I'm going to talk about Shakespeare first because I think that one's more difficult. So the way to prep your Shakespeare monologue, the first thing to do is you want to buy this book, No Fear Shakespeare. Don't fear about Shakespeare. Oh no, that's so lame. Anyway, these are incredible. If you haven't read them before, get your hands on one. This is just a second-hand one. I think it's from a library because it's got some weird thing on the back. But it was like £4 off eBay. You can also get the whole thing online. I'll put the link in the description. It's just No Fear Shakespeare. You can get most of the Shakespeare plays on there. But it's great to have the book because then, you know, you can write all over it. It gives you the Shakespeare version and then it gives you the modern writing version just beside it. It basically translates every single line for you into modern day English, which is exactly what you need because you need to know exactly what you're saying when you go into that room. If you don't know what you're saying, they're gonna totally know. Like, don't go in thinking that you can get away with it, like, oh yeah. And they will say to you, like, oh, what does this word mean? And if you don't know, you're a bit screwed. So yeah, and you need to read the entire play as well. That's so important. Otherwise, how are you gonna know how to perform it, what context it's in, how your character's feeling at that moment? And yes, it can be very difficult to read the entire Shakespeare play if you have no idea what they're saying for the whole thing, which is why these books are so good, because you can read the whole thing and know what's going on and feel like you're not completely stupid, which is how I feel when I read Shakespeare sometimes. Don't worry, everyone feels like that. I hope. It's also helpful to watch a version of it, get a DVD of it, watch a modern version. There's loads of things on YouTube, especially if it's more of a well-known Shakespeare speech. There's loads of versions on there, different people performing them in different ways. It's great to watch loads of versions and get a feel for it and how different people interpret that character and think they're feeling. So a lot of people say with Shakespeare you want to follow the iambic pentameter, which, if you don't know, is the way Shakespeare writes. So it's ti-tum, 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 ti-tum. For example, this is Hermia, Act 3, Scene 2. She says, "You do advance your cunning more and more when truth kills truth, O devilish holy fray." Oh no, that's Helena. Sorry, this is Helena. So, following the rule of iambic pentameter, it's "You do advance your cunning more and more when truth kills truth, O devilish holy fray." So it's basically a way of, obviously you don't say it like that, but it helps you realise where the stresses on the words might need to be. Also, I'd say look at the language to work out your dynamics. Things like if they say soft, it's better to say it in a softer tone. Just things that are quite obvious, but it gives you a nice balance of things of how to say your monologue. Practice it standing, sitting. How do you want to stand? How do you want to talk? Do you want to talk straight? Do you want to be a bit of on an angle? Like how you want to get across that character. Most importantly though, make sure you understand every single word, you've read the entire play, and if they asked you any questions about the character or about the play, that you'd be able to answer them. And there is information out there for Shakespeare monologues because they're so classic, and you'll be able to find that information, trust me. So yeah, that's your Shakespeare monologues. Then how to prep your contemporary monologues. Read the whole play. Please, please, please read the whole play because they will ask you questions about it. They will ask you about your character. Also, they'll want you to do it in your own accent. So even if it's set in Liverpool, you want to do it in the accent where you're from. Some of my auditions, they asked me before I started, what's your name and where are you from? Obviously, so they've got an idea of your accent. You want to know every single thing about your character. And if you can't find it in the script, I'd say make it up. It's up to you then. If you can't find that information about them, it doesn't matter, but you need to know in your head everything about that person. Really interesting thing to do is Uta Hagen's 9 questions. I'll put the link in the description. It's basically she was like a practitioner, and it's her 9 questions of what you need to know about a character before you can successfully perform as that character. And it's amazing. I did that for all of my monologues and all of my songs. Songs, I think it's harder, but monologues especially, you can just make up the information about that person, and it's quite a nice thing to do actually. How do you go about learning your monologue? So many people said to me, like, it just won't go in my head, I just don't know how to do it. For me, the only way to do it is line by line. I say the first line, and then I go back, and then I say the first line and the second line, and then I go back, and then I say the first line, second line, third line, then I go back, and so on and so forth. And if you can't remember it, you go back and you start again. That's the only way that's ever worked for me. Someone also once said to me that you can't learn things sitting down. I don't know, apparently it's easier to learn standing up, so maybe try that. You just gotta repeat it over and over and over and over again. I also recorded myself saying it on my phone, and if I had a minute of spare time, like if I was walking home from college or anything, I'd put my headphones in and just listen to myself saying my monologue. I think listening to it is a way to get it in your brain as well. Find different ways of doing it. So think, okay, today this character is going to be, she's angry about something. So even if it's not an obvious feeling, have in the back of your mind, okay, she's angry about this, so that's going to make a little bit of a difference to how I do it. Or do it like they're trying to hide something, they're trying to get something out of the person who they're talking to. Just little things that might make it jazz up a bit, make it a bit different. Go through and highlight the words that you think are the most important within that speech and stress those in your speaking of it, because you want it to be clear, and you've got to remember that you're performing this with no context. The audition panel haven't seen the rest of the play just before, up to this point, before you've spoken. Also, some people said in my auditions, can I give you a bit of context before I start? And they were like, no. Like, they're not bothered. But you need to be able to get that across as much as you can. Obviously they're looking at your acting ability mainly, but if you can get across the way your character is feeling and the way they live their life, that's amazing. Another exercise I did was improvising the scene into the monologue. So I just made it up on the spot, improv, to build up how they then feel, how they get to that point, and then improvising the scene out of it as well. Just it's a nice thing to do. The main thing they said to me at my GSA pre-audition course was that the punctuation rules the monologue. If there's a full stop, you stop. If there's a comma, you comma, and you don't pause where you feel like it. That's what they said. You have to respect the playwright and the decisions that they've made, because they've made those punctuation decisions for a reason, and you're only there to serve the text anyways. Another thing I did, which is really cringe, is every time I practiced it or I would perform it in my living room, I'd record it on my laptop, go back and watch it. It's really helpful, honestly, to see the things that you're doing, because obviously you can't see yourself what you're doing. To see the things that you're doing and go back and be like, oh, that bit looked good, and don't do that again because you looked really weird. Also, the advice I've had is that be really careful about who you show it to. Someone once said to me, it's your monologue, you need to direct it. I mean, I showed it to a couple of people and, you know, I was took on their comments, but I just kept in my mind that it's my monologue and that I'm gonna do it the way I feel is right, because after I'd done all that research on the character and everything, I was like, I'm the person who knows the most about it. Do you know what I mean? I only show it to people who are gonna have an objective eye and who are gonna really help you to realise, like, different ways it could be done, rather than, no, you've done it completely wrong, do it this way instead. Ultimately, you want to get across what your character needs. So every character needs something in the speech, whatever that is. It might be attention, they need attention from you. They need you to give them some money. They need a place to stay. Or something as small as they need you to understand why they're talking to you at that moment. But you need to get across that tension because you need something. Otherwise it's just going to be boring. You need to get across that you're there fighting for something. Also, I'd say be quite free with it and be able to change it up, because a lot of auditions, they do redirection. That happens, like, you practice it in a certain way and the words come out in a, you know, like a certain, you've done different stresses on different words and things like that. But I'd say be willing to play with it and be redirected, because that's what you're there for. And if you could show them that you can be redirected, that's the main thing. So don't practice it in one way so much that that's the only way that you can do it, because that'll only hinder you. It won't help you in any way. And it will get to the point where you might do it in the audition room and completely forget it, because you've been doing it just in this tiny little way for so long that changing it at all will make you panic. So I think that's the main thing. Read the whole play, you understand where your character is, what your character's doing, who your character is, where they come from, how they're feeling, and you get that across in your delivery, and you respect the playwright's decisions and make sure that you understand every single line. So yeah, that's the end of prepping your monologues. I've gone on for a long time, sorry. See you on part 3. Say entrance.